Unit 4. Listening. Exercise 3.
We're going to have a look today at Aboriginal art and painting, which actually dates back 60,000 years, making it one of the oldest art traditions in the world. Now, as long as Indigenous people have been living in Australia, they've been creating different types of art. So, let's start by having a look at some examples of ancient art. It includes things like, as you can see here, rock paintings, bark paintings, even some sand drawings like this have been found. Then there's the whole area of body art, which is so important for ceremonial practice. And lastly, here are some examples of decorative art on weapons and tools. The oldest art examples today are the rock paintings because, obviously, rock is more durable than other materials, and so the art has been preserved. In fact, most of this work is inside caves, largely because there it's been sheltered, hasn't been destroyed by the weather, while the paintings on outside rock surfaces have often been washed away over the years. Now, there are enormous variations in the style of Aboriginal rock art, depending on its age and location. Dot paintings are one of the best-known visual art forms of Aboriginal culture, in which a surface is covered in small dots to reveal symbols. Typical ones include arrows like this. Here's a waterhole, and these are animal tracks. You get to see both the abstract dot paintings and more naturalistic art. You get both in rock art of various ages. As the ancient Aborigines didn't have a written language, the key purpose of much of this rock art was storytelling, which has had a great significance for younger generations. Let's move on to look at the materials. Whatever they were painting, traditionally Aboriginal people all over Australia used pigment, such as ochre, to make paint. Ochre's very finely textured natural rock, and they used this because ochre is plentiful across most of Australia. It's coloured by iron oxide, which is the mineral that makes a lot of Australian outback soil, in places such as Ayers Rock, what is known as Uluru Red. Uluru being the Aboriginal name for Ayers Rock. However, depending on the exact conditions under which it formed, the shade can be anything from yellow to orange, red, purple or dark brown. Today, ochre occurs in many archaeological sites, and archaeologists at one site have discovered what appears to be an artist's palette of ochres dating back 18,000 years. Preparing the ochre paints was time-consuming work. First, the appropriate rocks had to be found and collected. Then the rock had to be broken up and ground into a powder, and that had to be mixed with some sort of fluid to bind it into paint. Nowadays, the binder most commonly used is professional artists' acrylic binder. But in the past, Aboriginal people used things like tree sap or something similar like bush honey. Other fluids must also have been used, but wouldn't have held paint on rock or a piece of bark for thousands of years, so sadly, those paintings would have been lost. So, how have things changed? Well, modern Aboriginal is a mixture of the old and the new. Things changed in the 1970s, really, when Aboriginal people from many different parts of Australia, particularly South Australia, Central and Northern Australia, took up acrylic painting and began to paint on canvas. Taking a modern approach has had many advantages. It saves artists a great deal of time, and they can still choose to use the traditional yellowish, reddish, brownish colours if they wish to. But perhaps the most important fact is that, unlike bark and rock paintings, the modern paintings are easy to sell. In fact, painting on canvas has given Aboriginal people an opportunity to showcase their art to the world and keep their ancient culture alive. Modern Aboriginal art, particularly dot painting, has taken off and started selling on a big scale internationally. Aboriginal art can also be found on pottery and various musical instruments like didgeridoos and clapping sticks. Together, these have become some of the most popular souvenirs in Australia, Their artists, like other artists in the world, are now able to earn a living doing something they are passionate about.
Track 7. Unit 4. As part of our series of talks on the history of visual art, I'd like to talk today about 3 forms of ancient art: cave paintings, petroglyphs and geoglyphs. Now, when we talk about cave paintings, we are usually referring to paintings on cave walls or ceilings, but we can also include paintings on rocks and other surfaces outside. We can trace some of these paintings to the Upper Paleolithic era, which is around 40,000 years ago, and most of them have a similar theme, that is, wild animals such as bison, deer, bears and lions. Humans, when they're shown, are almost always shown in a hunting context. Interestingly, human hands also feature, and abstract patterns are a recurring theme. A variety of materials were used to create these paintings, probably chosen for their vivid colours. Red and yellow ochre were the most common, but other painting materials included manganese oxide and hematite. Charcoal was the principal material used for the outlines. In most cases, the paintings were made directly on the flat rock surface, but occasionally a silhouette of the subject was cut into the rock first. Paintings made in this way are generally much better preserved than others. There has, of course, been much debate about why cave paintings were made. Were they simply put there for decoration, or did they serve a particular purpose? One theory suggests that images of animals were seen as possessing magic qualities, that painting them onto walls would increase the number of animals in the area and hence increase the food supply. I would dispute this, as while early humans would have wanted a ready supply of animals for food, this wouldn't explain why lions and bears are portrayed. There is, after all, no evidence that humans preyed on these animals. Quite the opposite, in fact. They would have done anything to avoid them. Perhaps one problem with working out why these paintings were made is that we're trying to understand the prehistoric mindset with a 21st century mind. The simple fact, unfortunately, is that we'll probably never know why they're there. OK, on to petroglyphs. These are images cut or carved into vertical or horizontal rock surfaces and are mainly associated with prehistoric people going back about 12,000 years. However, some tribal societies continued making them for much longer, often until contact was made with more advanced cultures in the 20th century. In terms of subject matter, petroglyphs usually consist of geometric designs, but animals and people also feature. As with cave paintings, we're not sure why they were put there, but they may represent some kind of not yet fully understood symbolic or ritual language. What we do know is that even now they have a deep cultural significance for the descendants of the people who made them. What is particularly interesting about petroglyphs is the similarity of designs across different continents. How could this be when the people who made them could not possibly have come into contact with one another? One theory suggests that the similarities are a result of the genetically inherited structure of the human brain. Many of the geometric patterns, known as form constants, which recur in petroglyphs, have been shown to be hardwired into the human brain. They frequently occur in visual disturbances and hallucinations. Geoglyphs are drawings or motifs on the ground and are made either by arranging stones, stone fragments, rocks and gravel, etc. on the surface to create positive geoglyphs, or by removing the top layer of ground to expose the rock beneath, creating a negative geoglyph. Size-wise, they're large, at least 4 meters across, and appear in various places around the world. The most famous are perhaps those in the Nazca Desert, a high arid plateau in Peru. These Nazca lines, as they are known, were created about 2,500 years ago and consist of hundreds of individual figures representing creatures like birds, spiders, monkeys and lizards. What is particularly interesting is that because of their size and position, these figures can only really be identified from the air. So, assuming the people who put them there couldn't fly, why make something that nobody could see?